Good morning, everyone, and welcome to it's afternoon. My bad. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Ignition News. Today is February 9th, 2026. We have some important stories to talk about, but also a moment of moral clarity. I'm so glad you joined us for a little bit of a later show today. We are late, but we are not detoured from giving, spreading, and talking about the truth. We have a very special show today because I want to combine the important news with the historical lesson and something we've talked about before on Ignite and on Rebel Radio, and that is the importance of resisting and not ignoring the truth. I'm so happy that you joined us. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Substack, whatever and wherever you want to find us. What we do here on the Ignition News is we break down 3 to 7 stories that we think are important for you to know about in order to stand up, fight for your democracy, and most importantly, to be able to spread and tell the truth. Today, it looks like we have about 5 stories today, depending on how time allows. But if you're watching live on one of our platforms, go ahead and comment in the chat. Let people know that we're here. Share the show out, and it is appreciated. How about that Super Bowl? Yeah. Before I get into the show today, I do want to talk a little bit about Bad Bunny, the Super Bowl, and MAGA's war on culture, which we'll discuss in a separate story. I did watch Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performance. I actually watched it this morning. I was working during the evening. I didn't get a chance to catch it live. But I think there are lessons in resistance that we can learn from small things that are not intended to be lessons of resistance. And I think Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performance, intentional or not, is an example of learning how to resist by being authentically yourself. So if you watched it, it was an unapologetic tribute to his heritage, an unapologetic tribute to his family, to his origins, to his language, and to his culture. In a time when unquestionably all of those things are under assault by a white Christian nationalist fascist authoritarian. It was not a direct attack on anything political or even cultural in the terms of, I guess, what MAGA would call a culture war. It was simply a beautiful display of cultural heritage, pride, inclusion, and confidence. And this is the thing that I think enrages them so much. The fact that a person can be proud of who they are, where they come from, the language that they speak, and at the same time be inviting, welcoming, and create beautiful art. This is why they are so angry. What culture does MAGA have? What culture do the Christian nationalists have? What music, art, liberation, fundamentals, what value do they add to society other than hatred, anger, and division? It was a powerful rebuke of Christian nationalism. It was a powerful rebuke of this ethnic cleansing that is happening in our country. And it was a powerful testament to authenticity. Excuse me. And that is one of the most important lessons. Unlike, unfortunately, the political establishment, our political institutional resistance is putting its head down, seemingly with the goal of, I guess, hoping it all blows over. But compare that with the Super Bowl, the performance, Bad Bunny. Whether you knew who Bad Bunny was or not, if you tuned in for the first time, you saw a powerful example of being authentic, realistic, and unafraid. And that is the most important message. Unafraid. So let us get on with the first story. Welcome to the Ignition News, everybody. It's great to have you. The first story is the continued Epstein Files cover-up. Today, I talked about this earlier in a different format. Ghislaine Maxwell is apparently saying that if she gets a pardon, if she gets a commutation, that she will clear the president's name. She will clear Trump's name. We are witnessing what is unquestionably the largest criminal cover-up in the history of certainly your lifetime. Definitely. There's never been anything even remotely close to this. But we are also quite possibly witnessing one of the largest overt criminal actions and criminal conspiracies in the history of the planet. A vast network. And I have to kind of kick it over to the people who we once called conspiracy theorists. I often share this. I used to work at Apple. And every now and then we would have people come in with their computers and they would have a little Band-Aid over their camera. And, you know, at the time, this was like 2010, 2011, people would walk in to get their computer fixed and they would have this Band-Aid covering the camera of their computer. You know, everybody thought at the time, oh my God, this person is crazy. You know, they're a conspiracy theorist. Well, lo and behold, as Edward Snowden revealed to us, yes, in fact, the government was capable of remotely getting into your computer, turning on your camera, observing you remotely. And now with spyware like Pegasus, they can do the same thing on your phone. My point here is, of course, many of us are only now coming to fully understand the vast network of this criminal conspiracy called the Epstein files, but people have been discussing it for a long time. And some of those people were treated very derisively. But here's where we are. Last year, Congress passed the Transparency Act, of course. The law is quite simple. It says release everything. There's not supposed to be any redactions other than to protect victims. Obviously, that was a deadline of December. We're now in February. We've gotten like 3 million heavily redacted files, and more of this information comes out every single day, and more of it's more disturbing. We talked about on the last Ignition News how we found a file that was apparently from August 9th, one day before Epstein purportedly died. It was dated, and the metadata on the file appears to be from August 9th, and it says that he was dead a day before he died. These are questions that we need answers to. But Congress is apparently trying to force their hand. Thomas Massie is trying to pull what he's calling the nuclear option. So here's what they could do about that, okay? Massie has the ability, other Congress people have the ability to read aloud this information from the floor of Congress. Not a lot of people know this, but congressional officials have complete immunity from anything spoken on the floor of Congress. So Massie is saying in no uncertain terms that he will take the files to the floor of Congress and he will read them out loud. We often talk about resistance, right? We talk about how to resist, how to use every lever and power at your authority. You know, you may not be a fan of Thomas Massie, but he has broken from the grip of MAGA and he is utilizing a tool in his disposal. So what he's saying is, I can go to the floor of Congress, read the files, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. That is resistance. The Trump DOJ is violating this law. I mean, they've broken a lot of laws, of course. They're releasing the victims' identities. I don't know if you saw that, but a lot of the files that are coming out have unredacted names of the victims. And this isn't complicated. It's just a cover-up, plain and simple. And it's happening right in front of us because they think that we're not going to do anything about it. But they're increasingly running out of horsepower. Let me tell you why. Welcome to the Ignition News, everyone. Our next story is actually about the DOJ. The DOJ has lost about 5,500 staff since the president first took over. So it's basically the entire Civil Rights Division, hundreds of prosecutors, and now they're getting very desperate. Jeanine Pirro went on Fox News, and she was basically begging people to email people to go apply to work at the DOJ. The Chicago attorney, U.S. attorney, sent an email to former prosecutors basically asking like, hey, if you know anyone that knows how to do law, we're definitely hiring. Stephen Miller is recruiting assistant U.S. attorneys via social media direct messages. Stephen Miller using social media, sliding into DMs of lawyers to get assistant U.S. attorneys. Now, you ask yourself, why is this news? Number one, it's news because it shows how this government has absolutely gutted the DOJ. Number two, in our resistance, it is important for us to know that while the state appears to be extremely powerful at times, that when you have something like this happen, when the mechanisms of the Justice Department are weakened, that actually makes it easier for us to push back and to resist. It makes it easier for us to say we will stand because they are gutting out the mechanisms that they can use to weaponize against us. Welcome to the Ignition News, everyone. It is August 9th. Quite an interesting day. I want to continue on another story. We've been talking about this a lot on the Ignition News. We really have to stop using diplomatic language about this. Our third story, another version of this story, is concentration camps. The United States government is building concentration camps. $55 billion. The Department of Homeland Security is apparently contracting with the Navy now to build what appear to be a nationwide network of concentration camps. It's a massive Navy contract, $55 billion. It started at $10 billion, by the way. They're using it domestically to build massive warehouses or to purchase warehouses and to retrofit them. And I ask you a simple question. Why would we be using the Navy to build warehouses, to retrofit warehouses, to find and scour buildings, to build and construct new facilities? Why are we doing this? Why are we allowing the Navy to retrofit and make a warehouse a jail overnight? to build tent cities. We did this in Guantanamo. Obviously, we know how to do this. Why would we do this? Well, I actually want to talk to you about something we've discussed before, the Society of the White Rose. If you're new to the Rebel Radio Network or to the Ignition News, in the past, we obviously always talk about powerful resistance movements. One of those we talked about was Sophie Scholl and the Society of the White Rose. Sophie Scholl distributed leaflets in Berlin on campus. She was 22 years old. At that time, it was absolutely illegal to speak out against the Nazis and the German government, but Sophie and her brother and a professor and several others quietly snuck away and mass-produced leaflets that they handed out on college campuses, that they mailed to prominent politicians and prominent citizens all over Germany. They did this at great risk. And on the subject of the concentration camps today, I want to read from you something from the third leaflet of the Society of the White Rose. It's talking about the concentration camps. Since the conquest of Poland, 300,000 Jews have been murdered in this country in the most bestial way. Here we see the most frightful crimes against human dignity, a crime that is unparalleled in world history. For Jews, too, are human beings, no matter what position we take with respect to the Jewish question, and a crime of this dimension has been perpetrated against human beings. When they were writing this letter, it was extremely dangerous, extremely illegal. They were calling out in no uncertain terms, telling the German people, you can't ignore what is happening to the Jewish people. You can't ignore the fact that 300,000 have been murdered. You can't do that. You can't look the other way. And then they asked, why do the German people behave so apathetically in the face of all these abominable crimes, crimes so unworthy of the human race? Hardly anyone thinks about that. The facts are accepted as such and put aside. The German people slumber on their dull, stupid sleep and encourage these fascist criminals. They give them the opportunity to carry on their depredations. There is no difference between the Germans in 33 through 45 pretending that the concentration camps were not being built, pretending that they could not see the smoke, pretending that they could not see the trains, and the people in your community doing the same. And so you ask yourself, well, what can I do about that? Well, I can only speak to what I'm doing, what we're doing. I live in Las Vegas. We have a Henderson jail, which contracts with ICE and DHS, $35 per day. That's blood money. It's blood money. City officials have decided to take $135 per day in blood money from the government of the United States of America in order to house and detain individuals on behalf of ICE. It's blood money. Try to think of what you could buy for $135. Books, an oil change, half of a cart of groceries now. So the idea that some elected official in my town decided that that dollar amount, that pathetically low $135 a day, that menial sum was worth someone's life, someone's liberty, someone's freedom, when in the face of all this horrible cruelty, we know they can't pretend otherwise. They know what's happening. They know well what happens to these people when they are detained by ICE, when they are removed from the city, when they try to move them to places like Venezuela where they are inhumanely tortured, some of them murdered and killed by ICE. They know this. And so you ask what we can do. Well, what I'm doing, what you can do, is expose this. Find the contracts. Find the people that signed the contracts. Make them answer these questions. Demand that they cancel these contracts. This is your tax dollars that goes into your general fund. If ICE is paying your government money to house people in these concentration camps, and you benefit that, your library benefits that, or your school benefits from that, it's blood money. And we can't stop all of it. There's no question about it. I wish I could tell you that every single one of us could stop every single one of these crimes, but we won't be able to. At least not right away. And so we have to start somewhere. We have to start where and when we can, who and how and what we can do to stop. And that's just one thing that I'm doing. It's just one thing that you can do. Other people in our community have done that as well, demanding action from their elected officials, saying, I do not support you taking this blood money. Sophie Scholl in the Letters of the White Rose. It's a very good story. We talk about it often. Sophie Scholl has a history for her time, obviously. But she said, we must confront this issue. These contracts are being built with blood money. And we can stop it. Let's get on to the next story. And it really highlights the hypocrisy of all this, by the way. So there's some new information coming out. ICE is not arresting criminals. My God, I'm so sorry. We know that there's 400,000 deportations so far. 400,000 immigrants arrested in the first year. 14% of those, only 14% have a criminal history. So 400,000 arrested, 53,200 have a criminal history. The other 86%, no criminal history at all. Obviously, they increased these arrests. 3,000 arrests per day is the quota. They're saying that they're getting the worst of the worst. 10%. Let's say you live in an apartment building. There's 100 people in the apartment building, right? 13 of those people have a criminal history, but you lock the doors on everyone. 86% of those people are being arrested, detained, and some of them are being killed for what is the equivalent of a traffic ticket. A traffic ticket. And by the way, those criminal convictions, most of them are traffic violations like DUIs, not murder or rape. They're traffic violations. 3,000 arrests per day. You think you won't get swept up in one of these arrests? You think if you look a little bit too brown, that you're safe? What happens when they run out of people that look a little bit too brown? They're going to go after people who look a little bit too whatever. And you think you're safe from this? I just ask you a question. What makes you think that? Articulate it. Speak to it. Let's move on to the next story. Culture war. We talked about Bad Bunny. Obviously, yesterday was the Super Bowl. MAGA absolutely lost their mind. President himself called it absolutely terrible. He said, one of the worst ever, a slap in the face to our country. Then he said, nobody understands a word this guy is saying because he obviously performed in Spanish. And he said he was dancing was disgusting, especially for young children. More than 50 million Americans speak Spanish. And obviously that wasn't enough. They had the Turning Point Super Bowl halftime show, the All-American halftime show. The peak viewership for that was 5 million. MAGA is absolutely celebrating that they had 5 million people tune into that. 5 million people. That's 4% of the Super Bowl's attendance and viewership. Here's what's actually happening, honestly. The Trump administration kind of assumed that the Super Bowl was going to be MAGA territory. Kristi Noem said in October that ICE was going to be there. They were going to be all over the place. Then, of course, they murdered 2 people in Minneapolis, so ICE canceled their operations. Bad Bunny, as my son has informed me, is one of the biggest musicians in the entire planet right now. And so one would think that in a country wanting to demonstrate its success, just like any empire, having the most successful recording artist in the world play at your signature feature event would be an honor, not something disgusting or terrible, especially for the kids, as the president said. But they continue to lose these culture battles. MAGA picks these culture battles and they lose them every single time. Every single time. Large swaths of the country tuned into the Super Bowl. People who never knew Bad Bunny before the Super Bowl watched and were amazed and inspired. People watched and learned about their neighbors, their friends, their coworkers. Imagine what a travesty being educated by the Super Bowl. They keep picking culture wars that they can't win. So what do we learn from this? 5 stories, 1 through line. Obviously, the Epstein files are being redacted, hidden to protect powerful men. The DOJ can't hire enough people, right? They purged everyone with any integrity. The military is building literal concentration camps. ICE is arresting hundreds of thousands of people. 14% of them are criminals. The rest are your neighbors, your friends, your family. And even MAGA is failing at their supposed culture war. What we learn from this is not random chaos. It's intentional. This is a coordinated effort to consolidate power, specifically because they're losing. It is an effort to normalize state violence, specifically because they are losing. In that 3rd letter by the White Rose, Sophie Scholl said, everyone is guilty, guilty, guilty. But it is not too late to do away with this most reprehensible of all miscarriages of government so as to avoid being burdened with an even greater guilt. She was saying, what we have done is wrong, but it is not too late to stop this. Of course, Sophie Scholl, Hans Scholl, Christopher Probst were killed by guillotine in 1943 for writing letters and leaflets, pamphlets, distributing them on a college campus. But she knew, and she said the truth. Evil is strongest in the systems that are failing right now. Evil is strongest in the systems forced to use more and more violence to prop it up. They're counting on you to be overwhelmed. They're counting on you to be tired. They're counting on you to put your head down as they build concentration camps in your communities. But every day you wake up, every day you get to work, and every day you push back. Stop assuming someone else is going to fix this. The people at the DOJ who were qualified to help us, they quit. They're gone. There's no checks and balances anymore. Sophie Scholl said, do not forget that every people deserves the regime it is willing to endure. Think about that. Every person deserves the regime it is willing to endure. You get the government that you allow to happen. She wasn't saying the Germans deserve the Nazis. She's saying you get what you are willing to endure. And we are at that moment right now. The infrastructure is being built. The camps are being built, the institutions are being eroded away, and the professionals are being purged or quitting. The arrests are happening in real time, and most Americans are treating it like background noise. It's not background noise. It's the main event. So the question is, are you going to tune in or tune out? That's the show, everybody. Thank you for tuning in on the Ignition News. This is February 9th, 2026. Good show. Good show. This has been today's episode of The Ignition News. Please consider following us on all of your favorite podcast platforms, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or Substack. We're here to deliver to you unfiltered, uncensored news. Let's get busy with the truth on The Ignition News.